if you have lots of different things going on with your skin and you're really not sure what facial is going to be the best treatment for you, if you're concerned about things like rough, dry patches on the skin, open pores, oiliness, fine lines, you want to have a bit of a lift, but you want to look smoother and more radiant, then I have the treatment for you, so stay tuned. Today I'm going to talk to you about microdermabrasion. There are two forms of microdermabrasion. I've used both, I get good results with both. It's really down to personal preference. So the first one is crystal based microdermabrasion, and that uses crystals to gently exfoliate the surface of the skin. And there's another form called diamond tip microdermabrasion, which uses a small diamond tip head that smooths over the skin to remove dead skin and imperfection on the skin. So the one I predominantly use is crystal. That has a few pros and cons. Using crystals, obviously you have to replace the crystals. That can be quite costly, and it can also lead to congestion in the machine. So the crystals have to pass through a lot of small pathways, and if they get any moisture in them from wet skin, for example, then that can congest the treatment and it can cause a backup in the treatment. So that could be a bit of a problem. But the good thing is that all of the crystals that we use, once they've touched the skin, then they're disposed of. So it's kind of like a disposable product. With diamond tip, you have to be responsible for making sure that it's properly sanitized. It's a metal headpiece. It can go in an autoclave, so it can be steam sanitized and get rid of any bacteria or cross-infection or dead skin and things like that that might have accumulated during the treatment. So as long as you have a really good sanitization process with the diamond tip, then they work really well as well. And then you don't have the issues that you can sometimes have with crystals. So why would we use microdermabrasion? We use it as a skin imperfection treatment. So we're treating lots of different imperfections on the skin. First of all, what it can't treat are things that are vascular, meaning broken capillaries, redness on the skin, that type of thing. But what it can treat is just about everything else. So it's really good for reducing pigmentation, reducing fine lines, for reducing the pore size if you struggle with open pores. It's really good for resurfacing the skin. So if you have a skin that feels congested and bumpy, or if you have a skin that feels rough and dry, then it will help to reduce those things. So it's a really nice resurfacing, smoothing treatment. How it works is it uses either crystal or diamond tip to provide some dermabrasion. It's microdermabrasion, so a gentle abrasion on the skin surface to remove dead skin cells. That does a couple of things. Number one, it's going to make the skin feel smoother because it's got rid of those superficial cells. But also in removing those, you stimulate the growth of new healthy cells below. The other great thing about microdermabrasion is that it provides a temporary lifting effect on the skin. So with Crystal Clear, the final stages that we do are lifting, which helps to stimulate muscles and help them to move up a little bit with the contours. And then we finish off with a mask treatment that helps hydrate the skin, which leaves the skin looking and feeling really good. So introducing you to the treatment and its controls and how it works. So first of all, let's talk about products. We really stick to the products that Crystal Clear recommend for this. And the reason for that is they're the ones that are approved to work on the skin when it is in that exfoliated state. And also, as I mentioned right at the start of the video, we have to be careful about congestion in this machine because it will stop it from working. So we have to make sure that the skin doesn't have a heavy, oily makeup or cleanser on the skin before we start to treat. So the first product that we start off with is Soothing Cleansing Gel. This is a water-based cleanser. We remove it with hot mitts and then we dry the skin afterwards. There is a toner in the range, but we don't use that until the end of the treatment. So we make sure the skin's completely dry and then we move on to the actual crystals. And you can see some crystals in the bottom of here. So these crystals are disposable. Once they've passed through here, they end up in a waste jar at the side of the machine and then they are disposed of. So to use the crystals, we undo that and we apply to the handset in the machine and we screw them on. And then anything left at the end of the treatment can be removed because that hasn't touched anybody's skin, so there's no risk of cross-infection. The final thing that we need is a nozzle, and we use a fresh nozzle for each client so that we know it's only touched one person's skin. Again, that is to reduce chances of cross-infection. So we've got the nozzle, we've got the crystals, and we're basically using this like a pen. We cover the filter, we pop our finger on top of that. That draws the crystals through the nozzle onto the skin, and then it has a little bit of suction in. You can see a little hole there. So the crystals come out of there and then they're sucked back into the machine. So there's not really any visible sign of crystals on the skin. You get a little light dusting off them, but that's about all. So we cover this to ensure that the crystals are being pulled through and that the suction is removing the crystals again. One of the things that we do have to do to prepare for microdermabrasion, and it only takes a couple of seconds, is a patch test. And what we do is we just do a couple of strokes of the machine on the inside of your arm, just to make sure that you're not going to have any reaction. The only reaction that we tend to see with this treatment is urticaria, which looks like a nettle rash, where the skin can swell a little bit. And if that was the reaction on your arm, we wouldn't proceed with the treatment with microdermabrasion. We would offer you an alternative. We're able to treat anybody with this treatment that had recently had an exfoliation service, like an exfoliation treatment or a peel, because this is going to do a very similar thing, and it would overdo the skin and it could lead to irritation, cuts, abrasions and things like that. So we normally recommend that you would leave 7 to 10 days between any exfoliation service, and that includes microdermabrasion, so that you would only have it once a week maximum. You wouldn't do it closer, so you wouldn't have it twice a week. The treatment is really gentle. The machine can make a little bit of noise, but the treatment is quite gentle. It's a relaxing treatment and it's really enjoyable. We have to check before we start that there are no contraindications, meaning things that we would have to avoid or may cause us to delay treatment. The type of things that we can't treat, as I've mentioned, are vascular conditions, but also we wouldn't want to work over any irritated skin, any skin infections, diseases or disorders, and we wouldn't want to work over any open skin that is in a healing process, and that also goes for skin that is bruised. So we have to check that the skin is in reasonable condition and intact before we start doing the service, so that we know that we can do it safely. The machine controls, we have an off button and then a level 1, 2 and 3. To get this machine going, you need to select what level you're going to choose and then switch it off when you're finished. The power button looks like it's an on or off button, but obviously that is just for switching it off with this particular machine. So once you know the machine is on at the mains and that it's switched on at the side, once you've got power, you'll get a little reading in this window and it'll light up and it'll say that the system's preparing. And then we choose the level that we're going to treat on. The level that you're going to treat on depends on how many treatments the client has had before and what you're trying to treat. So this treatment happens in 3 different phases. It happens by preparing the skin with a cleanser, as I mentioned, and then the next thing that we would do is called Beauty Flash. That is small sections of exfoliation all over the skin using the crystals. So we follow a guide, which is small sections all over the skin of just about that much, moving in lines, just covering each area of the skin once. So that is to just gently exfoliate all over the skin to prepare for treatment. So we switch it on to level 1. You can see it's a little bit noisy. I just want to show you how the crystals work. So put it on to level 1. And then we're literally just doing small sections over the skin. I'll repeat that in case you couldn't hear it. So we are just working in small sections over the skin, and you just get a tiny residue, I think you can see that, of crystals on the skin, so you can see where you've worked. So once you've done that, that's Beauty Flash. That's a gentle exfoliation all over the skin. Then you'll move on to the next stage, which is called correction. Now in correction, that's when we're really focusing on the areas that the client is concerned with and that we see is going to be a problem for the skin. So with correction, we are enforcing that exfoliation that we've done, and we work across the skin, crossing over and then doing a little circle. So on each area of imperfection, do a little cross, backwards and forwards, and then a circle, So that is adding lots and lots of layers of exfoliation onto those problem areas to draw the old skin off and the new cells up to the surface, the healthier cells. So by doing that, you are going to get a little bit of reaction on the skin. It can go a little bit pink, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking to, and we've got some decisions to make. Quite often we'll stick to level 1, and we always stick to level 1 if it's pigmentation that we're treating. Pigmentation is an inflammatory condition, and so if we're treating those dark patches of pigmentation, we have to gently encourage them off of the surface of the skin and through those damaged layers before we get a result. So it's going to take a few treatments. If we try to go in there on level 2 or level 3, it can trigger that inflammatory response because it's a little bit too strong for the skin. So that can actually lead to more pigmentation, which is what we don't want to happen. So we always stick to level 1 with pigmentation, and we move on to level 2 for treating other things like that I mentioned: open pores, fine lines, dry areas, rough areas of the skin. And so we can progressively work through level 2 to level 3, but we would do that with a client over a course of treatments by recording how the skin reacted and talking to the client when they return for their next treatment about how the skin reacted afterwards to make sure that we're safely progressing through. Once we've done correction, then we remove the crystals from the handset because we're going to move on to lifting. So the only thing we use the crystals for is the beauty flash and the correction. Anything that's left, we can just pop the lid back on. None of that's made contact with the skin, so that's okay, and we would dispose of the nozzle. So now we don't have the crystals, we just have the suction. And the suction we're going to work over doing a flicking motion from the jaw up across the face and then repeating on the other side. And we use that flicking motion to lift the skin. It's a temporary lift, but I don't think anybody's going to complain about being more lifted after a facial treatment. So it's a little bonus that we can give to the clients. It lasts about 2 to 3 days, and obviously the more often the client is coming back for the treatment, slightly longer the lifting effect lasts each time. So once you've concluded your treatment with the machine, and we've completed beauty flash rollover exfoliation, we've completed the deep exfoliation for correction, and we've completed the lifting, then we're finished with the machine and we're moving on to our treatment. The next thing we do is a treatment mask. The crystal clear mask is designed to work with that system, but you might be using a different system. But for this case, it is to reduce any contractions that might occur on the skin, and that means a reaction that occurs on the skin due to the treatment. And that's just things like redness, it might feel a little bit irritated because we've exfoliated over. So it's just calming and soothing and nourishing the skin to complete the treatment so that the client looks really well and really healthy, and the skin's in great condition when they leave the service. Then the final thing we'd do once we'd finished with the mask is we would moisturise, and then we hydrate over the moisturiser and rebalance with a toner. So it's a little bit different from your normal skincare routine where we would normally cleanse, tone and moisturise. In this case, our manufacturer's instructions at the end of the treatment are to moisturise and then tone.